Good day, grade 12, and welcome to Kuier Rapport Matriekklas 2021. Now, you've seen my face on the other videos that you've watched before, but I'll introduce myself again. I am Mr. Damian Magerman, and my focus is English First Additional Language. Today, we're going to focus on the higher order questions. Now, you might ask, what higher order questions am I referring to? These higher order questions asked in your comprehension in the paper 1. Now, very important, on the previous videos I mentioned of, especially with the comprehension, that reading is important. Reading, interpretation, analysis, extremely important, okay? And so is your understanding thereof. So, you need to understand that you need to take your time. You need to read, you need to identify in the title, identify who wrote it, but also identify why is it written. What is the actual meaning behind the comprehension? That is what is important before you can get to anything else. Now, as human beings, we all formulate opinions. We formulate opinions based on what we are educated from our parents, our peers, our family members, and even at school. But at the same time, you must understand that within the comprehension text in front of you, most of the time, those texts are published pieces of writing. And obviously, research was done and information was gathered to create that text. And in that way, information is given through. So if you go back and you look at what I mentioned in the previous presentation about X, Y, or Z, you will understand that that past paper speaks only on X, Y, or Z. But it speaks to different generations. Now, I can tell you this, you have an opinion on the different generations. And so, grade 12, does all the people in this country, in this world. We all have different opinions about it because we all come from different generations. And automatically, your opinion counts. We cannot say it does not. Now, when it gets to the higher order questions, it is about your opinion. And I'm sure as you've gone through the years in schooling, you saw questions based on your opinion. So let's get started and focus on what it actually is when it comes to higher order questions. Okay? I have placed within my slide the question words or instructional verbs that whatever we want to call it. Okay? Now, very important here. This is taken from Mind the Gap document on the DBE guideline, which you can utilize as you prepare for the examination. These questions here are level 1 questions. And yes, we are going to focus on higher order questions, but I just found it important also for you that you also go through the level 1 order questions as you prepare. Okay, so we understand that it speaks to literal. Okay, so literal means that these questions are based on the text. Obviously they are, all the questions are. But what I mean by that is your answers are in front of you. These are your level 1 questions, which are your 1 mark, 2 mark questions, which you will find easily, where they ask you to name something, list something, state something. Easy questions. Right? So that is what we identify from literal. When you have the time and you are able to read through this, you will understand what I mean by the answers are in front of you. It's in the text. Simple, easy questions. But we move on. Pardon. We move on to a different level. Reorganization. These are questions that you need to bring together, different pieces of information. But you will find that it speaks there to summarize, group, give an outline of. So if you need to summarize something automatically, it means if you are asked to summarize the meaning or the message that the writer is trying to convey in paragraph 4, your focus would be on paragraph 4. Very important. Okay? So it's how we interpret the questions that will tell us how to respond to the questions. Right, the next level speaks to inference. This is on how we interpret, make meaning of. Okay? Questions, here are questions such as explain how this idea links with this and that, compare the attitudes or actions, what do the words suggest. Another question that I can think of is why is emphasis placed on this, etc. How does the character react when described as something affected? Now, very important, you will find that in this it speaks about characters. Grade 12, these questions are also applicable for your paper 2. It can also be utilized as you prepare for your paper 2. Understanding, you see, it comes back to that thing, understanding. And so, comprehension tells us to comprehend, to understand. So, if I read and understand what I'm reading, I can respond. Okay? Very important. And then, most importantly, our level 4-5 questions, the higher order question, which is our focus in this session. These are questions that you need to gather your opinion based on the information given to you. Now, when you are given a question on your opinion, you must understand the following. The opinion asked is asked on the text, not on your knowledge of whatever the topic and the text might be about. I hope you understand what I'm saying. Let me make it clear to you. If, for example, right, the comprehension is based on manners matter, you have an opinion at home about manners, about respect. But so does someone who is 80 years of age. And that opinion differs because our generations differ. As human beings, we differ in our households, in our cultures. So our opinions differ. However, when you are given the question to provide your opinion, it is based on the text. And I think you need to understand this so that when you respond, you understand it is about, very important, about the text. I cannot stress this enough. Okay? So let's look at it. It says evaluation questions that require you to make a judgment. Very important. A judgment based on your knowledge and understanding of the text and your own experience. So very important, you will understand that the latter part says, and your own experience. But the priority here is the understanding of the text. So you are given this comprehension which you need to read through, you need to decipher, you need to understand, and you formulate an opinion. So automatically, the priority here is to formulate your opinion based, you're creating a judgment based on what was read. And these questions are posed last, always. And in these questions, you've already, before you got to them, you've already made a judgment the moment you saw the title. The moment you started reading, you formulated a judgment, and that is what is actually required. Okay? Right. So when we look at the types of questions here, it says, discuss your view. I'm going to say this again and stress it. Your view on the text. Right? A character's feelings or a theme. Right? So you consider all the information and reach a conclusion. Listen, consider all the information and reach a conclusion to respond to this question. Where's the information? In the text. Not, grade 12, the idea that you just want to impose your experience and your knowledge and your opinion. Okay? The next one asks you, do you think that? Now, obviously, a question like, do you think that? You obviously have to elaborate. You need to substantiate. Right? It tells us here there's no right or wrong answer to these questions, but you must give a reason for your opinion based on information given in the text. You see, everything I'm telling you is exactly this. It comes back to the text. So do you think this, that, and the other? You must substantiate. Right? It comes back to those yes or no questions. If a question is posed, for example, that, do you think that, you're going to say yes or no. Let me tell you this today. Yes or no. you don't get a mark for it. You get a mark for what you elaborated on. So if you said yes, what did you elaborate when you said yes? If you say no, what did you elaborate on? Your reasoning, that is what is important here. Not the yes and not the no. And the same is applicable to the next one, who says, do you agree with? So automatically, I agree or I disagree. When we respond to this question, grade 12, I don't know, we have this tendency of the question asked, do you agree with? So you indicate whether you agree or disagree. You cannot just say yes or no. And when you say agree or disagree, you need to elaborate. It comes back to that thing of elaborating. And then you make use of, for your higher order questions, when you elaborate, the P method, point, evidence, explanation. So there's a point you're trying to make. You provide evidence from the text, which is your support obviously, and your explanation, why you say this, why you agree, why you disagree, why you say yes, why you say no, right? We focus on, they ask you in your opinion. So it comes back to your opinion based on the text. I cannot stress this enough. It is based on the text. If the text is about politics in South Africa and they ask a question in your opinion, depending on the question, it is about the text, not what we want to impose because we have an opinion about politics in South Africa. Not because we have an opinion on the use of alcohol and drugs or crime and violence in South Africa, and now you want to impose your opinion. It is about the text given to you. Remember, you are given the instruction to read the text below and answer the set questions. That's the instruction. So why would we as your teachers and as the markers and as examiners of papers ask you to provide an opinion outside of the context? It is based on the text. Okay? Then give your views on. They sound the same? Your opinion, your views, they sound the same, but that comes back to the text. Okay? Then the last one says appreciation questions that ask about your emotional response to what happens, the characters, and how it is written. Okay? Now I give an example. In your short story list, you do the short story, The Doll's House. Now if you recall, there is a difference between the Bernals and the Calvis. And because of that, the little Calvis are not allowed to be around the Bernals, because we understand the Bernals, they have money. But now, it's about your emotional response. So I pose this question to you. Did you feel sorry for the little Calvis because they were not allowed to be part of the story of the doll's house, to be part of the girls to go and see the doll's house? Because that has to do with your emotional response to the text that we've read. So automatically, we feel sorry for them because they are excluded not only from the doll's house, but also at school. So they are excluded because of their social standing in that community. That is why we feel sorry for them. So that is how we would respond to that. Okay? So we provide an explanation, a point, evidence, and explanation. Okay? Right. We look at the question here. How would you feel if you were character X when? Once again, they tell us there's no right or wrong answer to these questions, but you must give a reason for your opinion, based on information. Okay? Discuss your response to. So discuss your response to how the Bernals treated the Calvis. How did it make you feel? Right? So that is your response. Do you feel sorry for? You see there where my question comes in. Do you feel sorry for them? And so with many other of the short stories that we do, you can actually take these questions and ask yourself these questions. How did you feel when you read this? How did you feel when you read in the drama My Children, My Africa, Mr. M died? And especially the way he died. Okay? So automatically you can also formulate an opinion in that moment. So you need to practice these types and the way the questions are posed. The last one says here, discuss the use of the writer style, diction and figurative language dialogue. To answer this type of question, ask yourself, does the style help me to feel or imagine what is happening or what the character is feeling? Why or why not? Give a reason for your answer. Very important that give a reason for your answer. So, discuss the use of the writer style, diction and figurative language. How did the writer write to convey his or her message? How did it make you feel? How did he ensure that the message that he wanted to convey got through to people? So these are the higher order questions or just examples of it, but that you understand that it's based on opinion and emotional responses based on the text. Information which you can respond to questions based on the text, not based on our own knowledge about whatever the text might be. Okay? That is how you need to understand and prepare for this. Okay, very important. Do not confuse yes or no questions with true or false questions. My apologies, I see my spelling mistake. Yes, teachers can also make mistakes. We are only but human. Don't make mistakes, right? So I'll emphasize this. Do not confuse yes or no questions with true or false questions. You have found over the years that there are questions that will ask you to indicate whether, and it's also vice versa, whether something is true or false. Then you say yes or you say no. But there's a difference between the two. When the question is posed to you to support why the following is false, then you are supporting from the text. But the moment the question asks you whether something is true or false, so they ask, is the following statement true or false? You cannot say yes or no. You must state false or true. If you are asked a question or how you feel or do you agree, etc., you would say yes or no. Are you with me? But when you are posed, do you agree or disagree? You need to indicate agree and then elaborate. Disagree, elaborate. That is a priority when it comes to these types of questions. Okay? Then always substantiate with valid reason from the text. But now, remember, for level 1, 2, 3 questions, you are going to respond in the comprehension in your own words. You are supposed to do the same here. But also, if you want to prove your point through the use of a quote, you are allowed to do that. But do it correctly. Open quotation marks, sentence, full stop, close quotation marks. Very important, okay? Marks are awarded for reason, not yes, not no. I've said this earlier as well. If you see that there's a 3-mark question, and you are posed a question, the same with agree and disagree, you are posed a question, and then you decide to just say yes. Who are you saying yes to? What are you saying yes to? I don't understand. My colleague won't understand who's going to mark your papers. Then how do you expect to get a mark? If 3 marks, do you think your yes is reason enough for 1 mark? No, because it's not applicable. So you need to substantiate why you say certain things and you would be awarded the necessary marks. Therefore, reading is important. When I read my question and I identify what I'm supposed to do, what the instructional verb is, I must also look at the mark allocation. Okay, right. Then, answers should be based on text. Based on text. Text A, text B, C, D, etc. When you see the comprehension, when you see the questions, all the questions, like I said earlier, are based on the text. none of the questions in the exam, grade 12, and understand this, none of them are based on any other questions. Don't you think it would be unfair if you think in paper 2, you are given an extract from My Children, My Africa in Act 1, Scene 1, the opening scene. But in the rest of the paper, they ask you about an event that happens later in Act 2. That would be unfair. But now obviously they can ask questions such as, you take the whole play into consideration and you discuss, for example, the title. That is allowed. But now, it's unfair if I'm going to have the extract of Act 1, Scene 1, but there's a question based on Act 2, Scene 1. That would be unfair. So the same thing comes back to the comprehension. We cannot ask you questions based on outside the context of the text. So when you formulate your opinion while you are reading, you are forming it based on the knowledge you have, but based on what you are reading. That is a priority based on what you are reading in that text, nowhere else. Okay? Here are 2 examples for you. The first one says, discuss. Now remember, priority here is, what is the instructional verb? It says discuss. So it tells me you're going to elaborate. That I understand. Right? I'm going to elaborate. I'm going to discuss. When you have a discussion, it's not short. Right? It's a lengthy one. Right? Very important. Discuss whether you agree with the writer's view that only time will tell. In paragraph 14, reference is given to you on that quote about the next generation. Now obviously, this is from a past paper based on the text X, Y, or Z. Okay? The question asks, discuss whether you agree with the writer's view. So you must indicate whether you agree to what the writer is saying. But now, of course, you could also disagree. So you must state this. But what is important, what I understand from this is, I must discuss. But I also need to take into consideration my 2-mark allocation. That is important. So I need to know then how long is my response going to be. Okay? So I've identified I need to discuss. Now I must ask myself what. Right? That's instructional verb. Now I focus on what. What is it? Whether I agree with the writer's view. Because I said this at the beginning. We all have differing opinions. Now in the text, the writer has a view on certain things. What is that? That only time will tell about the next generation. Do you see how important it is here? Reading, analyzing, interpretation. So, I must look at it and understand, yes, it's only for 2 marks. But because you are FAL, it will be 2 marks, 3 marks. Right? So automatically identify what I need to do. Now I know, okay, I read this, but let me go back to paragraph 15 and just make sure that it is correct. And then answer to this response. To this question. Priority, discuss whether you agree. Okay? The next one says, do you agree with the writer's views in lines 49 to 51? Okay? Now, obviously, this is now a lengthier quote than that. The question again says, do you agree? Automatically, yes or no? Yes or no? But substantiate your answer. Now, in here, it doesn't say substantiate your answer, but you should know this because you are asked the question, you are asked to discuss. Okay? So you're going to give a lengthier answer because you're discussing. Here, you're going to substantiate because the question is asked, do you agree? There it says, discuss whether you agree. Similar question, but you need to give evidence to what is being asked to you. Okay? Where are you going to get it? In the text. As simple as that. So, do you agree with the writer's views in lines 49? And once again, there it also speaks about the writer's view. Okay? So, use the past papers. Practice them. Go through them. See how the questions are posed and how there are similarities so that you can know when you prepare for the examination, you'll be fine. Because you can understand that higher order questions is based on your opinion and your emotional response on what you are reading. Okay, so we move on. We move on to the last idea of, and this is how I'm going to finalize off of what I've just said, right? It is important that you understand, if I speak of higher, it is a higher level, okay? A higher level response is required. Not the easy answers I'm going to give, not the one-liners, not the one words where I want to quote something. I'm going to give it in my own words. I'm going to say yes or no. I'm going to say agree or disagree, true or false, but I'm going to substantiate. If I'm asked to discuss whether I agree or disagree, I'm discussing, I'm explaining, so that the marker can understand how I gathered my opinion. That is what is important. How I want to express myself based on what I read, what it is that is required of me to do, and that is based on my question, and how I understood it. Right? So you need to obviously take the time, and this is what is important, time management. Take the time, because your higher order questions are your higher marks. That's what's important here, because we can easily lose marks here. And yes, the DBE guideline, Mind the Gap, said there's no there's no right or wrong answer, but it's going to be wrong if your elaboration doesn't fit the question or it doesn't fit the text. That is why we don't formulate just our opinions and we want to enforce it. It's about explaining based also on the text. So I wish you well as you prepare for this examination. Do not only take the time to focus on levels 1 to 3, but focus on levels 4 and 5. Take your time in the examination and see to it that question 1 is completed to ensure that you get 30 out of 30. All of the best, and may you continue working hard as you've done thus far. Thank you.